What's up, world? This is Maxwell 3000 Productions. I am Maxwell 3000. I want to welcome you again to Book Club with my partner, Tommy Dixon. How are you, Tommy?
Pretty good, man. How you doing this morning, bro?
I'm good. I'm good. And today we're going to bring to y'all The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. Upton Sinclair, really a pretty influential guy, but seems to me in our contemporary times, he's kind of an obscure guy. So I kind of found that kind of interesting. Anyways, he was born Upton Bill Sinclair Jr., September 20th, 1878. Died at 90 years old, November 25th, 1968. American author that was very popular in the first half of the 20th century. A lot of our favorite authors kind of mention him as inspiration or as a model. Um, he's known as a muckraker journalist and a political activist. Now, muckraking journalist, that was a kind of, I had heard that phrase before, but didn't really know what it meant. And that just kind of refers to, I guess, progressive era reform minded journalists in the early 20th century. And they kind of look to expose corruption in American political and corporate structures. And then in politics, he was really an outspoken and kind of unapologetic socialist. He ran unsuccessfully for Congress as a socialist in New Jersey, and then I think twice unsuccessfully for the office of governor in California as a Democrat at that time. Grew up in a middle to lower middle class home. It's kind of funny. His father was a liquor salesman, but from what I read, his alcoholism kind of overshadowed any pleasant childhood memories Sinclair Jr. might have had. Um, his mother, and his father's family, interesting enough, was a well to do Southern family that kind of lost their fortune um, post Civil War during the Reconstruction era. You know, the labor crisis that occurred right after that, and then along with the agricultural depression that kind of was going on in the late 19th century. So his father's folks was kind of out of money, but his mother's folks was a well-to-do New England family around Maryland, and young Upton, spent a lot of time with his maternal grandparents, and it kind of gave him a perspective of life from both the middle class and the lower class, where his father kind of lived. Um, Interesting enough, his father being an alcoholic, his mother was a teetotaler. She hated alcohol, coffee, and tea. So that was kind of that's funny in
It's a
juxtaposition.
track.
Yeah, yeah, right. And so for today, The Jungle, probably his most popular work, originally published by a socialist newspaper, The Appeal to Reason, as a series running from 1905 into 1906. Sinclair spent about 2 months in 1904 kind of undercover in the Union stockyards of Chicago doing research for this book. Um, and I'm going to let you talk a little bit more about the book itself. But what it's more known for, I guess, is some of the laws that were passed in response to this expose, you might call. Um, and Tommy, I'll let you take it over from there. Tell us a little bit more about the jungle.
So in the jungle, when the story opens up, excuse me, we're following a an immigrant family just has come to America from Lithuania. You have a young man, Yorgis, and his bride, and then a couple other ladies from her family and a handful of children. They're coming to America to seek the American dream. They're looking for a better life. He's basically a simple country boy from the forest in Lithuania, and they think that they're going to come to America and find their fortune, uh, perhaps even live a life of luxury somewhat. I I drew this comparison as we were discussing it, that it reminded me of the movie An American Tail, with Five Mouse-Moskowitz and his family we saw when we were kids. They're coming to America to escape the cats and all, but thinking it's a better life. They get here, it's just as bad, if not worse, than where they came from. But I'll tell you, the jungle is not a kid's story in comparison to American Tail. This is the adult version, and that being said, it's not funny. It's not necessarily a happy story. You get a lot of detail and exposure once they come to Chicago around 1900. You get a lot of details about the meat packing industry. There's a lot of information about the killing rooms and slaughterhouses. Basically, it's dirty, it's dangerous, um, and it's not only is it unpleasant work, but they're not getting paid a lot. I mean, the whole family has to do everything they can to provide income, and if anybody falls short on their part, then they're all in danger of freezing or starving to death, freezing
Starvation,
to
yeah.
death. I mean, it's a dangerous situation. The lifestyle is not pleasant at all. And as the story goes on, different situations and some tragedies befall the family. Uh, Yorgos, if you want to call him the main character, he goes through all types of turmoil. And there's ups and downs in the story, but it's a pretty intense account of what life would have been like for these immigrant families around that time. And I say the immigrant families, there were, I guess you call them native born Americans also working in this industry, but the system was kind of designed to take advantage of those less fortunate, I guess. Um, and then you also have some of the writer's influence. He takes advantage of this story to share a lot of his political beliefs and gives you some good information on the socialist system. Uh, all in all, it's a very interesting, somewhat educational read, if you ask me.
Yeah, and as far as the read, it is a fast moving story, right?
Right.
I feel like I could definitely tell that it was written as a newspaper series.
Yeah, yeah, he definitely put in enough details, and I guess that's part of the ups and downs. Like you could imagine how, man, if it left off right here, then the readers or listeners, if it was being read to them, they're anxious for that next chapter or section of the story to come out. However, it was published, it was broken down, but it's it's pretty intense. I thought that it kind of started a little slow, maybe just because there was so much detail describing the scene. But that, and on that note, I know we kind of compared Sinclair to a couple of our other favorites as far as being able to set the scene and really paint a picture with his descriptions of the places and the towns, everything that's going on. Kind of Jack London, John Steinbeck in that same vein.
Well, and
So
it's
that's
funny you
something that
mentioned
made
them,
it
right?
enjoyable.
Because Jack London was a big inspiration or kind of role model to Sinclair,
Right.
and definitely does a good job with that descriptive language. But also, I mean, and it goes back to this serial publication. It felt like he was in a rush. You
Right.
feel that way?
hmm
Yeah.
He had a point he wanted to get across, and only so much time to do it.
Yeah, and
I'd
then
say he made
another
good
point
use of
you
his time.
made. Say again.
I'd say he made good use of his time, though.
Yeah, I would agree. And, but and to kind of build off of what you were saying as far as him getting off his socialist ideals, I mean, this was a piece of propaganda. Would you agree with
Right.
that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and propaganda being the literary technique of writing and speaking in a persuasive way, right? It's
Right.
trying to persuade you to my side.
Yep.
Um, And he does. He deals with a lot of different things, mostly the struggle of the worker or the
Hmm.
proletarian, so to speak. Um, and so it's a little interesting to me that from my reading and my perspective, that was the main point and the main impact. But the impact that it had on society was not for the conditions of the worker, but the handling of the meat.
Right.
The legislation that was passed, and they were both the Pure Food and Drug Act and the Meat Inspection Act. They were
Mhm.
both passed in 1906, months, a few months after the last article was published. So it was interesting. The effects might have not been exactly what he meant for them to be.
Right. Still had benefits. And I was just thinking when you call it, refer to it as propaganda, made to influence an opinion. I mean, and it was effective as high up as the office of president at that time. The president reads this and says, "Okay, we have to do something about the situation in Chicago with the
Yeah.
meatpacking industry. And if not for this, a lot of our food products today might not be as safe and sanitary as they are."
Certainly makes you rethink a Slim Jim.
Oh yeah, to
Yeah.
say the least.
So he does a good job with that descriptive language, and I think that's what really made those effects. Him being able to describe those scenes. But as far as the socialist commentary or the socialist propaganda, I felt like he was pretty effective in that. Um, what did you? How did you feel about that?
I felt, yeah, affected for sure. I felt enlightened on the subject whenever I got done reading this. Of course, I've heard about the idea, and I had a little context about the concept, but it gave a much more in-depth look at a lot of the socialist ideals. It was kind of eye-opening, far as that goes. I think a lot of people look at socialism and have looked at socialism like it's a bad word almost. And even like in more recent political scene, maybe the last couple of presidential elections, like socialist, democratic socialist, like that's a scary thing. And then one thing I thought that Sinclair mentioned that was most interesting was that people who follow the teachings of Jesus Christ, like that guy's was the original socialist. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of it's kind of funny to be so on board with the one and then adamantly against the other when the principles are very similar, if not the same. And maybe
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was a piece of the propaganda, so to speak, which is effective as far as that goes. It's an effective technique.
Yeah, certainly to use somebody's religion to try to sway them one way or the other. And I
Mhm.
think it's interesting when we think maybe about modern propaganda or contemporary propaganda and rhetoric. And when you say, from your perspective, you didn't really link Christianity with socialism necessarily. Um, but going on right now in the early 20th century, there are other theologians working on this same concept. And you and I discussed a little bit, Dr. Martin Luther King was in that line of theologians subscribing to what is kind of known as social gospel theology. And we could spend a long time on that. I don't plan to do that. I'm not going to bore you with that. But it's just interesting as far as um, that juxtaposition with how we look at it now. And it also makes me think about, we talked a little bit about how, Marx said communism is the specter. The specter of communism is spreading across Europe. Is maybe that same specter just changed its name to socialism? Is the specter of socialism still kind of hanging around in Western civilization?
So that's pretty good comparison as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, yeah. All right, that's good stuff. Well, we don't want to spend a long time and give everybody the book. What? How did you feel about it? What? what would you how would you compare this book to other things that we've read, and maybe kind of give a review?
Okay, so honest opinion on this book, I think it compared to other things we've read and we've reviewed, more educational, I think. If you're willing to look at it from that perspective, you can learn some things reading this, and you can also be entertained. Um, the I hate to say this, I don't want to like cast a negative light on it, but the ending was a little, it left a little to be desired as far as my opinion, but it's hard to judge another man's art in that way. I still respect it for what he created here, and I enjoyed it. I feel like it was good for me to read it. Not, whereas a lot of things are entertaining and I enjoy that. It's a different feeling to feel like, you actually gain something from the reading. It may not be as pleasant as other things that you read for entertainment purposes alone. And that's not to say that it wasn't entertaining. I still enjoyed the read, but just gives you more to think about. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would certainly say that the ending was anticlimactic, but I also feel like, man, what a great writing prompt for some graduate student that's studying literature, or even an undergrad student, or even maybe a high school student to use that as a writing prompt.
Hmm.
Could really be interesting. Um, we compare him a lot to Jack London, and probably rightfully so. Um, I would say that maybe all of the ideas as far as intellectualism is there, but Sinclair is much more direct in the jungle, where Jack London is often hides his messages within metaphors, and kind of deeper within the story. Um, just in that comparison, not to say that either is good or bad. I guess I may prefer one over the other. Um, Another thing that's kind of maybe being a little critical of Sinclair is he became redundant in his writing with the usage of certain words and phrases, and it was overwhelming to me, the redundancy. Um, but other than that, I thought it was a really good read, and I agree with you. I think this is something that, where in high school we read maybe an excerpt of this book. I think all Americans should probably read this book.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good advice.
Whether you enjoy it, whether you agree with what his propaganda is,
Hmm.
um, you should still read this because of the effects that it's had, and because just to broaden your view, maybe, of the political and social atmosphere. Um,
Good idea to take in as much info as you can from different sources, whether you agree with it or not, and make your own best opinion based off that.
Yeah, and even if you don't agree with his ideals, I mean, we looked at this and setting this in our conversation in philosophy and sociology, and kind of I said philosophy. We talk a lot about John Locke, right, and
Hmm.
the idea of the natural man. Well, Sinclair takes you through that, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah,
and go ahead.
there's a definite evolution of the main character in the story. Yorgos is comes from the country. He's like a kind of a simple guy, like you say, natural man, closest thing to the natural man
Straight
represented
out
in
of the
this
middle of the
story.
woods, right?
Yeah,
Straight out
yeah,
of the middle
and
of the
dropped
Lithuanian
into
woods.
it dropped into the middle of Chicago. I mean,
Industrialization, yes.
big time change, and he has to adjust. He has to make adjustments in order to survive.
Yeah. So whether you agree with Sinclair's politics or not, it's an interesting philosophical journey.
Definitely.
Cool, cool, cool. So you would recommend? I think we both said we would recommend this, whether you
Yeah.
enjoy it at entertainment value, just for the educational purposes.
Yeah, I think so. And that's not to take away from it being an entertaining read.
I agree.
It's
Yeah.
just something that people should maybe be prepared for going into it.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, that kind of wraps up the jungle. I really appreciate that. I hope folks go and read that and spend a little time on learning who Upton Sinclair was, because we did not do him justice as far as his historical
Right.
him being historically relevant, or or his contribution to literature. Right, over a
Right.
hundred public works in his catalog.
Yeah, just for the sake
Um,
of keeping this brief, we didn't want to go into all the details, but there is a lot there.
Yeah. And so we're going to continue this, right?
Oh yeah.
All right. And we're looking at another book. Let them know what we're looking at next time.
So right now we have started a book called The Sea Wolf by Jack London, who's another one of our favorite guys, right? And
My favorite author. My favorite
yeah,
author.
so being about a quarter of the way into it right now, it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, yeah. And we've mentioned it before, and I don't want to take anything away from Upton Sinclair because I haven't read a lot of his work, and obviously this is a specific piece, being that the way it was published. But as we kind of mentioned when we talked about Bukowski in comparison to Steinbeck, there's levels, right?
Right.
And I just really love Jack London, and we could spend a whole lot of time right here just me talking about that. So we're going to leave it right there. Closing thoughts.
Get your library cards updated and go and get something good to read. Feed your mind. Uh, if you really want to get into it, go and get the Seawolf and follow along with us even.
Yeah, and if anybody that sees these things, if you ever have any questions or comments, comment below in YouTube. Reach out to us on the socials. And yeah, get involved in this journey with us. We'd appreciate it. We love it. We love literature, and we want to spread that for sure.
That's right.
All right, man. So this is Book Club with Tommy Dixon. I am Maxwell 3000, Maxwell 3000 Productions. Peace and love.